Hello, my fellow bookish people. Hello, my fellow cinema buffs. Today I'm coming to you with a tag. This is an original tag created as the very first video by Joey over at Game of Authors. His very first video is an original tag video, which if you can come up with as great a tags as this, you totally do it. In this tag, you pair books that you love that got turned into movies that you loved. And it's a kind of one of these top 10 lists, starting at number 10 and going to number 1. Let's start off. Number 10, the book is Wonder Boys by Michael Chabon, a 1995 book that was turned into Wonder Boys in the year 2000 by Curtis Hanson, starring Michael Douglas, Tobey Maguire, Frances McDormand, and little, Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr. Set in a kind of a small university writing program. I went through kind of creative writing program. Never was a Wonder Boy, obviously. But it really captures kind of that feel of a writer's program, especially the opening scene where they have all the little wannabe writers getting around, absolutely ripping apart Wonder Boy's manuscript, saying like, "Wow, that was crappy. That was shit." That didn't actually happen to me, but that kind of a horrible emotional feel to it. Yeah. This is definitely probably my favorite Curtis Hanson movie. Number 9 is Into the Wild. A 1996 book by Jonathan Krakeauer, all about Christopher McCandless going into the wild and how horribly terrible that went wrong. Got turned into a movie starring Emile Hirsch by Sean Penn as the director. And this was a really good example of taking a nonfiction book about a nonfiction event and dramatizing it. I really remember Christopher McCandless' relationship with the character that Hal Holbrook plays in this thing is kind of an elderly man, and kind of trying to offer some sort of a connection, something that would maybe help this young man was sort of driven to put himself into an extreme, dangerous situation. Number 8 is Clockwork Orange, the 1962 novel by Anthony Burgess, which was turned into the 1971 Stanley Kubrick movie starring Malcolm McDowell. But this kind of a dystopian future, that the novel having kind of wonderful, rich, constructed language of this kind of a dystopian, kind of new dystopian world, youth language, kind of a thoughts of like kind of the Soviet Russian language interfacing with the English language, and just sort of the ideas of violence and social control. Stanley Kubrick had a much colder outlook on society and the human condition, as you can see from his movies going forward. Number 7, Great Expectations, and I'm going to pick the David Lean version. It's a black and white 1946 version, which just really had this impact of me of like, wow, this is how cinema kind of synthesizes a kind of a huge novel into a really, really psychological depth. Brings out a lot of stuff in it, and just beautifully photographed in this 1946 black and white version. Number 6 is Orlando by Virginia Woolf, which I did. A 1928 novel of a young man who gets told never to change by Queen Elizabeth, yet goes through the centuries and seems to be living all this time, changes gender. Is just like it's a beautifully written, probably very accessible Virginia Woolf. I've heard it termed some places as kind of an entertainment. In some ways, I kind of have a tendency to like books where the author isn't trying as hard. In a way, in some ways isn't trying as hard. There's different concerns in this book. This was turned into the 1992 film by Sally Potter, starring Tilda Swinton, who is just somebody who was born for this part. Just an amazing actress, beautifully photographed. That's my pick of these are I think if I have a striking thing of like, it's like there's beautiful language, beautiful kind of amazing kind of stuff happening in the books, but gets translated into these filmmakers who have equally amount of stuff to contribute in a kind of filmatic language. That sort of number 5, Mr. Kubrick is going to make a reappearance. Eyes Wide Shut is the movie, 1999. It was, which I believe is probably what I actually watched first, which is, I guess, appropriate that I bring it up. And the 1926 Traumnovella by Arthur Schnitzler, an Australian writer, and I read the translation. Both are very dreamlike. One is set in kind of a turn of the century Vienna. The other one's set in like a 1990s New York. So they make for both wonderfully kind of artificial, dreamlike places where these men have horrible kind of like sexual anxieties. Number 4, gotta have some science fiction on my list, is Solaris by Stanislav Lem. That is a 1961 novel by a Polish science fiction writer. Kind of all about how, if we meet aliens, the chances that we're ever going to be able to actually make a jump in kind of communicating with them on any kind of meaningful level is highly unlikely. This book is Stanislav Lem is great at kind of really kind of very mind-blowing thought experiments that way. I am, of course, talking about the 1971 version of Solaris in movies by Andrei Tarkovsky, the great Soviet Russian filmmaker who made whose long takes, beautiful cinematography, just sort of kind of alien, this was like art. This is a great example of someone who is a great artist taking art from science fiction and the two melding and being able to meld those visions together. Number three is my cheat. I'm going to pick something from TV. This is I, Claudius and Claudius the God by Robert Graves. It's 1934, I believe. They are really interesting books in the sense that Graves has written them as sort of historiographies. It sounds like a chronicle written by a Roman of the history of kind of the Claudian family and just all the we're going from Augustus Caesar, Caligula, Nero, and it's like, wow, you want soap operas, you go to the Romans of this period for all the vicious stuff. And so, of course, it was turned into, beautifully produced, beautifully acted soap opera in the 1976 series starring Derek Jacobi, written by Jack Pullman, who, was... I have to give him credit because, wow, he wrote this. I believe he wrote the entire series. I've watched them recently, and they're just so well written. And I mean, he's taken something that was actually kind of written kind of somewhat dry in a sense and turned it into this amazingly written series. Number two, I don't know, this is pretty high a number thing, but I'm going to put Crash, J.G. Ballard's 1973 novel about people who get sexually off on car crashes. And this got turned into the 1996 movie by David Cronenberg, who really took this, they kind of melds both their concerns of the technological and the human and smashes them together, and just kind of the melding of the human and the mechanical. And it's one of those things that even today, I think, even for something written in 1973, and those concepts of just like the mechanical, the artificial melding with something as intimate as human sexuality and changing it still says a lot about today. That leaves me with number one. Number one is The Seven Pillars of Wisdom by T. T.E. Lawrence. It is an account of his serving as a liaison officer with the rebel forces during the Arab Revolt against the Ottoman Turks from like 1916 to 1918. And this got turned into Lawrence of Arabia by David Lean, the 1962 film starring Peter O'Toole, which it's an epic. It's an epic story about the war, about this sweep of history, about this larger than life figure. Yet at the same time, it captures some of the intimacy of Lawrence's inner turmoils, his inner struggles, his push and pull between wanting to be this great figure, but also wanting to be left alone. I guess I picked this as my movie of the lot. The book itself is also just so it's the combination of two. This book is beautifully written. I discovered it through a poet. Yeah, that is my top 10. I love the book. I love the movie tag. There's books that I love the movie, but I didn't actually love the book that much. Some of the movies that I quote, I have to say I probably quote this movie. It's for the best, ma, or Bah-ram you. There's a lot of this movie in my head. And I'm not unhappy about that. I think that's probably made me a better person. So, more videos later.